At the New Jersey SBDC Network, our mission is simple: to help businesses grow and succeed. Our consulting, training, and information services make it easier for businesses to reach their potential. Whether you're currently in operation or just starting out, we have the right tools, resources, and expertise to help you succeed. Visit us online to get started on your path to success today.
A pleasant good morning to everyone. My name is Takoa Bell. I am one of the event coordinators for the NJS BDC at Rutgers-Newark. And on the behalf of Dr. Tendai Enduro, the Regional Director, I would like to welcome you all to our Understanding the Financial Implications of Supply Chain Decisions webinar. For those of you here that may be unfamiliar with the SBDC, it stands for Small Business Development Centers. And here at the New Jersey Small Business Development Centers at Rutgers-Newark, we serve as the premier provider of business training and technical assistance services to establish small businesses, startups, and to entrepreneurs. Now, we are one of 12 centers within the NJS BDC network, and we only service those in Essex County. Our center here is hosted by the Rutgers Business School and funded through a public-private partnership agreement between the Small Business Administration, Rutgers University, and the New Jersey Business Action Center. Now, our mission here is to help entrepreneurs as well as business owners start and grow sustainable, successful businesses through the delivery of one-on-one business consulting, training, and technical assistance programs. Now, all of these services are provided to you at no cost, and they are paid for by your tax dollars. So if you or your business is located within Essex County, feel free to visit our website at www.rnsbdc.com. It's located here on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And once you're on the site, we have a red button labeled Request Counseling on the top right-hand corner of the website. So clicking on that button will lead you to fill out some information about the help you're seeking and about your business. And within 24 to 48 business hours, we will assign you to one of our consultants. And for those of you here that are not located in Essex County, feel free to visit our headquarters website at www.njsbdc.com. And on that website, you can type in your county and it will refer you to your local SBDC office. For the benefit of everyone attending today's webinar, your audio has been muted, but we will be taking questions via the chat and the Q&A feature here on Zoom. So please feel free to post and ask your questions, and we will do our best to respond during or at the end of today's webinar. Also, a copy of the presentation slides along with a video recording of this webinar will be emailed to you within 48 to 72 business hours so that you can always refer to this information long after today's webinar has ended. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you all our presenter for today's webinar, Professor Anthony Tate. Professor Tate is an assistant professor in the Professional Practice Department of Supply Chain Management at the Rutgers Business School. And now, without further ado, I will turn today's webinar over to Professor Tate.
Good morning, Takoa. Thank you very much. And good morning and welcome to those who have joined this morning. I'm going to share my screen. Takoa, if I can share that. Thank you. Okay. Again, good morning. As Takoa has mentioned, I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Supply Chain Management here at Rutgers Business School. This slide here tells you a little bit about my background, and I'll just cover it very quickly. I've spent 35 plus years or so on Wall Street in finance, sales and trading, asset management, investment banking, done quite a bit of work with some of the what is now just the big four accounting firms in the area of financial advisory, and have also advised and worked with the federal government from the White House down to some of its federal agencies. And I have dual degrees from Rutgers University here. Today, I want to talk with us about supply chains and supply chain management. And in as much as, the audience here today is mostly small business, I want you to really be able to take away from this webinar things that are going to help you better operate your business. And as we know, knowledge is something that, number one, no one can take from you once you have that knowledge, but also knowledge is transferable. So whatever sector of the business that you're in, whether you are producing a product or offering a service, some of the things, if not all of the things that I'm going to talk with you about, I want you to be able to think about your business model. I want you to think about how it fits into the concepts that we're going to talk about this morning, and where you might be able to gain efficiencies in your supply chain. On this slide here, you can just look at it visually and see that these are some well-known companies and their brands, Coca-Cola and Google and Apple, Unilever, and they all operate supply chains. In this slide here, and I'm going to go through 4 parts here. The first part, I'm going to talk about supply chains and supply chain management, which are 2 different concepts. But I'd like to start with this slide because it allows us to see, this is Boeing's supply chain for its 787 Dreamliner structure and the suppliers that it uses. You might be a small business, but you have multiple suppliers and you have to engage them. And there are multiple ways in which products are brought to you before you bring them to the end user, your customer, or the consumer. But if you look at this particular slide, you'll see the part name, you'll see the company and the country from which it comes from. And a company like Boeing is a global company. It gets its materials from around the world. There's a business approach to that because companies look for where they can purchase the materials that go into their products at a really low cost but high quality. And then they bring those parts together and they manufacture them in one place and they produce that end product. So here very quickly, you can see the wingtips. If you look to the top left, they are made in Korea by a company called KAA. If you go forward down to the forward, straight down to the forward fuselage, made by Spirit in the US and Kawasaki in Japan. You go across to the far right, you see the fixed trailing edge, again, Kawasaki in Japan. You see the engine in the middle of the slide. The Rolls-Royce is made in the UK and also by General Electric here in the United States. And it just reminds us that we live in a globalized environment and companies utilize the global platform to find high quality items at reasonably cheap costs to effectuate their product. So what is a supply chain, right? So probably prior to 2020, many people never heard of the word supply chain, or it was infrequently used in the public domain. Now you hear it all around because there are issues and disruptions and many concerns about the supply chain, because we feel it as consumers when you go to the store, when some products are not available. So first, it's important to define what is a supply chain. So a supply chain is any organization anywhere in the world that offers a product or service. That company has a supply chain. And the products and services that companies have are created from materials, equipment, labor, time, money, and other resources. And producing and delivering these products and services requires other independent partners in a company's supply chain, in your supply chain. You're going to have suppliers, you'll have manufacturers, there'll be obviously the customers. All of these independent organizations and partners make up a supply chain. And therefore, supply chains can be very simple, they can be very complex. You could have a simple service of being in the IT space, and you are a troubleshooter of small business issues. They could be very complex also in the IT space, where you are managing fairly large networks within a company, cyberspace services. And I always like to use the example of McDonald's. We've all probably been there one period of time or another in our lives. And when you go into McDonald's to place an order, what appears first to you is a very simple way in which to get the food that you've ordered. You go in, there's a point of service person, they ask you for your order, you place it, and you pay for your money, and then you go to pick up your item. And it's very simple in that once the order is taken and it's keyed in, that order goes to the back of the house. And those individuals that are working there take your order, and let's say it was the Big Mac order. They take the meat, they take the buns, they take the lettuce, the pickles, they put that together. They don't forget to add the special sauce that makes it unique from Burger King or someplace else. And then that's wrapped up and pushed down a small chute by which someone else who is working on the fries section, if you've ordered French fries, adds that to your order. And then a third person fills your beverage order. And in a very short period of time, and we know that's why it's called fast food, your order is complete. The customer gets it where and when they want it, and then you leave the organization or you leave the building. That's a very simple example of a supply chain. And yet, what we don't see often is that McDonald's as an organization, as that franchise, is operating a very complex supply chain. They have relationships. There's a company that provides the meats for them, a company called OC, was their biggest supplier out of Chicago. There's another relationships with the those that grow the potatoes, hundreds of millions of them that then get sent out to the different locations. There are those for the breads and the condiments, the oil, the lights, the cleaning of the building. All of those things make McDonald's supply chain, which we encounter in a very simplistic way, very complex. Now, it's important to know and understand the structure of a supply chain. And so I'm going to bring this in all at once so we can see it. The structure is really important. At number one, there is in the primary market, your suppliers, the raw material suppliers. You may have intermediate suppliers and finished goods suppliers. That material or component parts is passed on to the manufacturer, who is going to finish building the product that is available for purchase. Once that product is completed, it's then sent up the supply chain or forward, where it is held by a wholesaler or a distributor or placed in a distribution center or warehouse. And then the retail store, whether it's a local store that you may have, whether it's a Walmart, they then receive by order the various products that they sell off their shelves. And then you and I go to a Walmart or a local store where we see those items that we want to purchase, and we get them there in a very convenient manner. Those products have to be and are facilitated through the use of logistics, because you might make a product, but how does it get from your supplier, who may be nearby to you, who may be as far away as China or Mexico? How do they get to the manufacturer? Well, it has to be transported, and there are various modes of transportation. Water, by boat, some by rail, more than 80% in the United States by truck, and sometimes by air, depending on the product and the need for that product to be delivered faster than those other modes of transportation. But then when those products get to near where you are, they have to be stored somewhere, because generally the retail store or your store has a limited amount of space. Also, the space that you pay for at the retail location is usually at a higher per square foot cost than if it's kept at a warehouse further away. So you not only have to transport those products, you have to store them, and then you're able to store a certain amount at the retailer who sells them to the customer. So here we're going to talk about the supply chain flow. And again, I want to remind you that as I go through this presentation, it's really, really important that you start to see how your business flows and is incorporated with the things that I speak about in terms of supply chain and its management. So supply chains have a certain kind of flow. And we just talked about product and service flow. So my red arrow shows that the flow is from left to right, or what we call flowing up the supply chain, from the point of origin, the raw materials, all the way through to where it's purchased by the customer. Then there's information flow, and this is really critical to the success of small businesses. Information, and we live in the information age because of various modes of getting information, information from the customer or information from my suppliers. So companies that do well and improve upon their products or services, they value the communications and information that comes from their suppliers. When the suppliers talk about enhanced materials, better ways to do things, the manufacturer or the sponsor of a product or service, they begin to take that information into account in how they enhance their product or service. Another way in which information flows is from the customer, how they receive our product or service. And that's why you send out a survey. Did you like our service? Was it efficient? Did we answer your question? Is there ways that we can improve upon what we offer? And when that information flows back from the customer to your organization, you make the necessary adjustments. And if a company doesn't, then what happens, the customer becomes dissatisfied. The customer eventually leaves to find a better company, a better product, a better service. Now, payment flows are important. there's only one place in a supply chain where revenues are produced, and that is at the cash register when the customer or consumer pays for the product or the service. That's the only place. And so it's important to understand that the suppliers that you work with, the transporters, wherever your products are stored as inventory, that all of your partners are advancing their funds and making this investment with the anticipation that your product or service will have appeal in the marketplace. And you and I and others will want to purchase that item. And when we purchase those items, then all of my partners are reimbursed out of the purchase price, the product that was sold. If there's no or little appeal for my products, number one, I can't stay in business because I can't repay myself and my partners, and inventory starts to build up and those costs sink the business. The last supply chain flow is returns. And this is a really critical part of your supply chain. No one likes to see your product come back. And the math behind it is that when products are returned, they cost you actually more to handle and put them back into your supply chain than when it went up the supply chain and you made a sale. Because it comes back for several reasons, and I'll mention a couple. One might be that the product broke down, it malfunctioned. And so you have to take it, you have to replace it, you have to refurbish it, and all that takes time, money. It may damage the relationship with the customer because of low quality. But sometimes people return things just because of preference. Now, I happen to like the color blue, and if someone gave me a red sweater, perfectly nice sweater, high quality, but I'm going to return it for a blue sweater of the same quality. That red sweater has to be handled again and handled in a way that it goes back into the supply chain of that company so that it then is displayed for sale again. Now, there's a relationship between links in the supply chain. And I just look at this quickly. So every link in the supply chain is both a customer of their suppliers and a supplier to their customers. So just think about it this way. The manufacturer who orders, like let's say if it's Ford or Toyota, they want cars to be made. They have various suppliers that produce the tires, the windshields, the doors. All of those things are sent forward. It's received by multiple suppliers. It's received by the manufacturer on both sides, in and out, and he passes it along to the customers. So therefore, they're a customer of their supplier, and they're also a supplier to their customers. And therefore, relationships are really critical in a supply chain that's effective and efficient. So we're all part of supply chains, whether we know it or not. It's like air, it's all around, and we are a significant part of every supply chain. Now, I want to just bring in this example of the candy bar to kind of show and put in context some of the things that we're seeing in the marketplace today. So we all have a favorite candy bar. We have an example here with the Hershey company that makes some nice chocolate candy bars. And what we're looking at here in a very simplified way is how the candy bars that we buy at Walgreens or Walmart or the local, gasoline mart, how it's actually produced. So in the primary market, where you have the suppliers and the raw materials, that's where the candy bar starts. And you need sugar cane, you need cocoa beans, polypropylene and ink for the packaging. And when things operate well, the sugar cane is converted into sugar. You have milk that comes through the dairy farmers in America. That whole industry is under great pressures and consolidation today. Some of it is because in this country, many people don't drink milk after a certain age is passed. And then you have the chocolate and the cocoa butter, the lecithin and packaging. And now that goes forward to the manufacturer. The manufacturer has the candy bar that is made. And then it's sent forward to the wholesalers, distributors. It's at the retail store, and it's positioned right before we check out so that it entices us to buy some, even though we say we don't need the extra calories. But now, what happens when there's a disruption? So what we're seeing in the markets today is a supply chain disruption. The disruption has come in many ways. Initially, the pandemic, and people could not have predicted this in this way, that the pandemic forced countries around the globe to tell people, employees, to go home and stay home for their own health and safety. And all those were good strategies. But what was impacted was that if all of the workers are home, there's nobody there taking the sugar cane, the cocoa beans. And so therefore we started to see only what's in the pipeline, right? So we don't really see the impact yet, but the pipeline continues to flow, though there's been no cocoa beans in this example that has been extracted and sent forward. So suddenly you can't get the chocolate and the cocoa butter that you need to make your candy bars, but we're still buying them at the retail store, right? So today there's been a slowdown in products produced in China and Vietnam and Mexico and other places, but you and I are still able to go to the store. We're still able to buy clothes and buy food, right? Because it hasn't really affected us. We see these pictures in the news about the problem, the blockage of the Suez Canal earlier, ships being, stuck at the ports, and yet we're like, okay, we still got toilet paper and milk and this and that, right? All right, so let's see. Here's what happens. You don't have cocoa beans. You can't make the chocolate. You don't have the cocoa butter. And while you might have the sugar and the milk and the lecithin and the packaging, you can't keep making your product because the key ingredient is out. So what eventually happens? You're forced to stop making all orders from your suppliers because you can't make your finished product. And so all of this disruption impacts all of the suppliers. And now, when you and I go to the store, your product, or in this case, the Hershey bar, is not available anymore, and we have a full market stock out. And so the takeaway here with the supply chain and disruptions that happen is that you experience disruptions in your small business when one key ingredient or supplier is not able to fulfill their contractual obligation, and you may be able to continue to service your customer because the customer doesn't see that yet or feel it. But when you're completely unable to fulfill your product orders or the service requirements, then there's a total breakdown of your supply chain, and you cannot meet your customer needs, and you have a total shutdown of your supply chain. So just remember, all supply chains are linked together, and disruptions over a prolonged period of time is going to hurt all of them. I want to just give a simple example here again of supply chain. This may apply to your business, but it's good to see a supply chain that's a little bit more complex than a candy bar. This is a fresh produce supply chain. So as we know with food and food products, and you might be in the restaurant business, so you can understand this. In the raw materials area, there's an orchard for which you have fresh produce that comes. Then it has to go to a packaging house that has to put it together. Then there's regulations often that require inspections of your food product if you're in that business. If you're in other businesses, there may be certain regulatory requirements if you're in pharmaceutical businesses, if you happen to be in areas like finance or some of these other areas, you always have to factor in the regulatory requirements and expectations. Then there's cold storage because it is food. And then when it comes, if you would, to this next level, there's a next level of inspection when it comes out of food storage, because we know that the cold slows down the breakdown of food, but some food had already started to break down before it went in. So now there's another level of inspection for public safety. Then the produce goes through transporters, trucks. Sometimes they have to be transferred because they can only travel a certain distance by law. Some of them, if they're overseas, go on cargo ships. Those ships then come into ports. They're taken off these ships, and then there's another inspection, okay? And then ultimately they're put into storage at warehouses, DCs. When they come out, in this next to last step, there's final inspections. They go to the supermarket where they're on display, and then you and I purchase hopefully what is very healthy food and safe food for consumption. So we've talked about what a supply chain is, but now, as you know, things just don't manage themselves by themselves. And so we're going to talk about what it means to manage your supply chain. And these concepts are very important. And I hope you're taking some notes a little bit, right? So you understand, you know, for yourself as an entrepreneur, that you may have a good product and you may have some good suppliers, but if you aren't managing the store, eventually the store is going to break down and have problems. So the things I talked about previously may seem to you just like a series of steps. And in one sense, there are a series of steps. You buy materials, you know, they're passed through your supply chain and they get sold to your customer. But the management of the supply chain is much more than that. It is the coordination of your network of independent companies and partners who are creating the desired product or service that you want to offer to the customer. And then it's passed through your supply chain to your customer or the consumer. And this is really important, when and where the customer wants it. Because, you know, if I've got to drive 60 miles to get that product or service, it's not when and where I want it. And so I'm going to find an alternative option that is where I want it and when I want it. So supply chain management is really the process by which business gets done. And this is really a critical concept for you to have. So supply chain management is based on these two ideas. Every product reaches the end user. It represents the cumulative effort of all the organizations that you work with. The other thing is, formerly in the past, companies used to actually function in, a silo. They focused on what was just inside their company, and the perception was within their control. But the emergence of supply chain management is about active managing the activities of the supply chain so that you can maximize customer value and you can achieve a sustainable competitive advantage. And so in your business, what you are offering, number one, you're trying to position your company so that your customers are repeat customers, and you want to gain some sort of competitive advantage, even if you are a small company, because you may not be as large as an Apple or some other companies, but you know what? You can make millions of dollars through the toes of giants if you actively manage your supply chain, you create real value for your customers, and thereby definition, you are creating a sustainable competitive advantage. So how, again, is this maintained? So supply chain management creates value. So everyone talks about value add, right? So in your mind, in your business, every single day, when you look at your business, you have to say, is my supply chain, is my product, are my people creating value? And so supply chain management creates value and it eliminates waste. Anything that's going to take away from value by managing the processes of all your trading partners so that you can collaborate with each other. So we know from our interpersonal relationships that when they break down and you have a problem with your relative or good friend, it's because communications have broken down. The same thing with business. If you're going to create value for your supplier, for your customer, for the transporters that deliver your products or services, you have got to talk with them a lot. You got to let them know what are your plans for 2022. Are you going to increase the production of your product? Are you going to change where you store them? Are you going to use technology better or in a different way? Because if you're not on the same page with them, what happens is they're operating based on 2021 information and you've changed it for 2022, you're going to have inefficiencies in your supply chain and the costs are going to go up, because I can tell you a mistake will be made and something will have to be done again, and therefore it will reduce your revenues, reduce your profitability, or it may actually make you unprofitable. Now, you always have to have goals, right? We know this from the time we were young. Parents would say, if you don't have goals, then you're not, moving in the right direction. So supply chain management has two main goals. Increase customer service, or what we all know, I want to satisfy my customer, make them happy. So it's getting the products and services that our customers want to them when and where they want at the lowest possible cost. And at the same time, simultaneously, on our side of the ledger, the business owner side, you want to reduce your inventory, because high inventory sitting there costs you money. And if it's food or some other related products, it could be technology, and technology changes very quickly, then you may have things that become obsolete that you lose all of your investment on. So you want to reduce inventory, keep it as low as possible, while at the same time managing or lowering your operating expenses or costs. And so the reason why you use supply chain management, achieve cost savings, better coordinate your resources while making sure you satisfy your customer. So a lot of what I've talked about has been around products and what you make and what you sell. But there are supply chains in the service industry as well. I give some icons here that talk about different industries. Whether you're in medicine, technology, you're not building a tangible product. These are intangible products that are offered. And typically, when we talk about the service industry, there is high labor content, and what people pay for is the intellectual brain power aspect of the service that is being purchased or offered. In the service industry, customers are much more directly involved. And I give an example here. If you want to wash your car, the car wash doesn't own your car, but they're going to provide a service of cleaning. So you have to bring your car to the car wash, and then they apply their service to your car. Same thing with a dry cleaning service, hair salon, tax services. These are all examples of companies or services that are offered in the service industry. One more slide on supply chains in the service industry and the thought about brain power. So Rutgers sells, academic intelligence. That's what we do. We impart knowledge and experience to our students, and they take that packaging and they get a degree for it that means something coming from Rutgers University and its brand, and in the marketplace, they are hired based upon the knowledge gained here. Consulting firms do the same thing. So if you're talking about Ernst & Young, Deloitte, they are selling brain power and how they think about problems, and they get paid for utilizing their brains. And some of you are in these kinds of areas that you provide a service, and your intellectual power and experience is what you are remunerated for. Now, there are two basic supply chain capability models. And I want you to think about which model applies to your business, because it's really important. If you don't know which one of these buckets you're in, you may have some difficulty in achieving your goals and creating competitive advantage. So there are two models: the efficient model, the responsive model. The efficient model means that I've got a product that I can create at a pretty high volume amount, and I can do it quickly, and I can do it at the lowest possible cost. So it's a product that I can gain economies of scale. It doesn't change a lot. Maybe you're producing umbrellas, and those umbrellas have a certain moniker, they have a certain color, and they're always going to be generally in that style. So when I put them out with my supplier, they can make 1,000 of those, real quickly at a low cost. They're predictable supply. There's going to be heavy inventory turnovers for my customer. And so these tend to be common products that people buy a lot of and anywhere. The responsive model may be for some entrepreneurs, small business owners on the call, that your supply chain has to be fast and flexible. You have to respond quickly to the dynamic market demand. There may be new product launches based on what is trending in the marketplace. And so in your model, you need to have a degree of flexibility in the supply chain. You have to have small lead times. So you can't, let something sit out there for 2 months being made. It's got to be, a month turnaround. And so you have to have high inventory of certain parts, components that go into your product or service. And a lot of companies that are under the responsive model provide pretty innovative types of products, technology, customized clothing, all of these kinds of things. Now, the next two slides, we're going to talk about, an approach that most companies follow. They're either, again, one of these two business models. The first one is what we call the push business model. It's called the push business model because I want you to think of standing behind an individual and pushing that person forward. And this is the concept here. You're making your product, right? And this is for products now. And you are making a certain amount and you're putting it in inventory because you know that people want to buy your product. You might be a bakery and you know that people come in on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for this kind of pie or this kind of pastry that you make. So throughout the week, you can do your forecasts and say, well, we sell 500 of these or 1,000 of these. You create your supply plan for all of the ingredients. You build it, you put it in inventory. And when I and others come in, the product is immediately available to sell or to send to your customers. Most companies, mostly greater than 95%, use this model. Our sneakers, our coats, a company forecast, give me 1 million of these. They bring them in, they put them in inventory somewhere. When we go to the retailers, they know that we are buying ties and sneakers and hats and coats, and they're there for us to purchase and use immediately. So those are some of the advantages. The disadvantages is that you got to deal with high inventory. And that means you're going to spend more money because you've got to pay for a bigger warehouse. You got all of the carrying costs associated with the warehouse, insurance and security you have to pay for. And the last bullet here that is really important is that if for some reason, in my bakery example, there's a new baker that opened up, or there was a change for some reason in the consumer preference for your pies, you may have over forecasted and now you're left with more pies, and because it's a perishable good, it's going to go to waste and you'll lose money. So a major disadvantage is being left with high inventories that you have to pay for. And if your forecast was off, it can lead to obsolescence. Or if you under forecasted, then you don't have enough in inventory when there's a rush for your products. The next business model, which I'll move quickly through, is really a customized model. These are business owners that have specialty products. It could be a bakery that has real specialty kinds of foods that they make only during the holiday season. It could be, I remember seeing a television show about these customized pools that some people put in their homes. Well, you can't make a lot of those because they're customized. You make them when the order is placed. The advantages is that you don't have inventory of these parts. You don't have to worry about forecasting them. But a disadvantage is for the customer, they have to wait longer because you're only going to start to build that custom pool or that custom suit or wedding dress when the order is placed. And therefore, if you're the bride, you have to put that order in earlier because it takes a longer time to make your specialized order. So not many companies are in this space, but if you're in this space, you are a make-to-order pull business model company. Let me just check on my time. So I'm going to go through a couple of these pretty quickly. And from this slide, I just want you to take away that you have to plan. You have to map out the processes of your supply chain when it comes into your hands, right? How do you build it? How do you make it? What are all of the detailed component parts? And I want to tell you, whether you're a small company or a big company, you have to have a process map, right? I was with a pretty large company just the other day, and we went through their process map to look at how things go from a step-by-step basis. And there they were able to uncover where some of their bottlenecks and where they're losing money. And then they make those changes. So if some of the large companies look at this, you need to look at it being smaller businesses. And a key takeaway from this slide here is at the top. So it's a hierarchical planning process, but everything starts at the top. And if you're a small business and you don't have a business plan, you're going to have problems succeeding, because your business plan lays out your vision, lays out your financial plans, lays out the competitive market, your product. So you got to start with your business plan. And then you have to couple that with your financial plans. Where do I get the capital from? How much do I need, right? And then whatever your strategic plan is, right, for your business, all have its place in your business plan. Then you can go down talking about all of the details that are needed for your product or service. And the key takeaway from this slide here, they look the same to you, but they're different. The slide before was the importance was that everything flows down from the leadership. And then the leadership has the responsibility of knowing the process for everything that happens in your organization, and in particular, related to the production of your product that you want to sell to the customer or consumer. This slide here is about operational excellence. You've heard Lean Six Sigma philosophy. It simply means, how do we eliminate waste? And waste could be something as simple as your employees sitting around with their feet up on the desk, waiting to be told what to do. That is waste, waste of capital, waste of time, waste of money, right? Another waste could be that you have too many of one item or another, and you don't need that many sitting around in inventory. So it's costing you to pay for that space. You have an overabundance of it, those items could become obsolete. So you need to push for operational excellence. And that's going to start with the effective supply chain planning and control techniques over your business. And so there's a delicate balance that I bring out in this slide between meeting customer demand, their requirements, internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, and what it costs you to make and provide your product or service. And supply chain management is that mechanism by which you try to balance what the consumer market is demanding and what it's going to cost you to produce those items or services. Here you see some of the benefits when you employ supply chain management. Improve customer service. Your customers are going to see it and really respond to how you become real customer centric. It'll increase your revenues. It'll drive down costs, and you'll see better asset utilization, whether it's in the office that you rent or own, in the warehouses. There'll be better utilization. So a high utilization of a warehouse or your office space means that you are much more astute at using that particular location or office. You're going to retain customers. You'll have shorter lead times. All of these things will create value for your business. Now, I want to just, in these two slides, I'm just going to jump quickly, is the process of determining where technology should fit into your business to help you, to leverage you up as small business owners is really important. You got to move away from manual inputs and things of that nature. Anytime something is done manually, and doing it repetitively, you increase the probability of errors. So you've got to learn Excel, and you've got to learn some of the other basic tools that will increase efficiency and drive down errors. That's number one. But then the technology and tools that you need to look at that will help your overall supply chain operate efficiently. I will tell you what I've noticed sometimes with small businesses, and this is sometimes the byproduct of less capital and things like that. But one of the areas that small businesses lag behind is things like having updated versions of the Word suite, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. Why you need to pay for those increases is when you don't have software that is current and supported by the organization that's made it, you leave yourself open for hacking and for viruses. So at a minimum, make sure that your technology platform is up to date. The other thing that happens is you may have suppliers who have up-to-date software, or it may be the opposite. You have up-to-date software and theirs is not. You're going to have integration problems. And so you have to collaborate and make sure that you're on the right page. Now, I want to just jump forward here. Money matters, okay? And let me just go forward here. Why is supply chain finance important? Why do you need to focus on the money? This, again, is an area that sometimes in small businesses, some people are afraid of money, doing calculations. But if you are going to be successful, if you're not going to get ripped off, if you're going to drive your costs down, you have got to understand the money side of your business, okay? Sometimes in small business, you're the CEO, the CFO, the chief supply chain officer, but some businesses may have distinct categories. Each one of these leadership positions has a specific role and vision. And as it relates to money, it's important to know what the vision is and what the focus is on these key C-suite positions. To change how you've been doing things, you have to go about it in a very methodical way. And I hope, as you have an opportunity to revisit my slides in detail, you'll examine some of the things that I'm going to talk about here in the next minute. This slide here is a good slide to understand how you attack and look for to make change and by identifying value in your company. You have to first sit down, and I want to tell you, these things take a little bit of time, and it's one of the reasons why sometimes small businesses don't do it, is because you got to go offline to actually do this analysis. But you really sit down with your stakeholders and think about the value and the deliverables that goes through your supply chain. Create a project proposal. Here's what I want to do. At the end of this, we want to be better here. We want to increase output. We want to drive these costs down. We want to find new suppliers. You want to identify all of the stakeholders, who is involved in this process. And then you want to look at what are the current business objectives and imperatives of our company. How do we go about our business, right? How do we identify, leadership strategy and vision? And that may come from you as the business owner. Identify also where there's alignment with your corporate vision and where things have fallen off, where there's misalignment. Because where there's misalignment, you're working against yourself, you're wasting time and money. And then you go through all of these particular steps. How effective is the current performance against what we said we wanted to do, right? This is what we said we want to do. This is actually what we did. You look at those differences and then you correct those differences or eliminate them so that you are more aligned. What are the top leading options to generate new value, right? How do you eliminate errors? How do you eliminate bias, right? Implement technology, priorities. Maybe you have to change some employees. Maybe you're giving someone a chance and have given them an opportunity, but they're not doing better. Well, why waste more time? Find somebody that is going to do exactly what you're paying them for. And sometimes you have to give up a little equity to get someone that will buy in because they have a stake in your organization. And then what value will be created and what is our go forward plan? So when you're finished with all of this, right, you can then look at your supply chain and you can look at your inventory days if that was a problem. Maybe you haven't been on top of your accounts payable and accounts receivables. Maybe your overhead needs improvement, right? Maybe maybe you sell, you're good at selling, but you haven't been able to have a high order fill rate, right? And then that can be really disappointing on the sales side. So you want to have really high order fill rates so that your sales force is incentivized to, sell more because they may get paid a part of the commission and they see that you're able to deliver. And then ultimately, you're going to do better in terms of your revenues and your profitability. So my time is almost gone and I want to just move ahead a little bit here. Here's really important to your financial statements. You need to understand what the income statement is, what a balance sheet is, and what your cash flow statement is, right? Take a course, do some reading online. Understand that the purpose of the income statement is to provide financial earnings performance of that entity over a specific period of time, okay? And we have a little calculation here. Revenues minus expenses is going to tell you what your earnings is. Did we make money or did we lose money? That's what an income statement looks like. Don't be intimidated by it. The balance sheet. What's the purpose? Is to identify the assets that you have and who owns them. And the difference between the balance sheet and the income statement is the income statement gives you a picture over a period of time, whereas your balance sheet is a snapshot at a single point in time. Your customer or somebody that you may want to be an equity owner, they say, give me your balance sheet as of 12/31/2020. They want to see exactly what your assets were at that point in time. Someone else is going to say, show me your income statement over the period of the year, the last 2 or 3 years. And that's what a balance sheet looks like. And then lastly, your cash flow statement is important to see where the money is coming from and where it is going. How do we know if we made or lost money also? So maybe you're borrowing money to leverage your business, so we know where it's coming from. And maybe you had to buy capital equipment, so we know where it's going out to. These are all important financial statements. And that's what the cash flow statement looks like. let me take you right here. There are supply chain influences on your income statement. So if you are always late, your revenues are going to be impacted. Your fill rates, if you don't fill your orders on time, your revenues are going to be hurt. Procurement costs, inventory costs are going to drive up your cost of goods sold, what it costs you to make those goods. And then supply chain overhead, salaries, depreciation, they're going to impact your overhead costs, SG&A. Their influences on your balance sheet from supply chain inefficiencies or efficiencies. And working capital, the money that you actually need against inventory, to pay down bad debts, to make your payments of obligations, your free cash will be either hurt or enhanced in how you manage your supply chain. And then lastly, I want you to think about this. You have to understand financial metrics around the decisions that you make, right? How much of every dollar that I sell do I keep in my pocket? That's a profitability ratio. Efficiency, ROI, ROA, asset turnover ratio. The higher these numbers are, the better. And tell me I'm more efficient. Leverage. What proportion of your company is financed with debt versus capital? These are leverage ratios. How much interest am I paying on loans? And then liquidity is really important. So when you go to borrow money for your company, the bank is going to do a liquidity ratio test, right? How solvent are you? Or are you basically taking in money, paying out debt, and just barely keeping your head above water? If that's the case, it's going to be really hard for you to get a lending facility from a bank. You may still have to go to family and friends. Know what these financial ratios are and their impact on your company. So this is my last slide. Key takeaways. Any organization anywhere in the world like yours that offers a product or service has a supply chain. They're going to be like your company. It can be real simple or it could be very complex. But supply chains today have to be agile and flexible. So when we talk about disruptions in the supply chains around the world, you may have to figure out how to now redesign your supply chain because some products, components from different vendors that used to come in always, within a certain period of time, now it's taking longer. So you may have to go find alternatives if you can to meet your customer requirements. And decisions on redesigning those supply chains should be done with understanding that there is a financial implication, right? More money, more efficiency, less efficiency, more technology to make you efficient long-term, but these are some of the realities of creating competitive advantage for your company. So thank you again for taking the time to listen. And if you have any questions, I'll take them at this time. And again, thank you very much. I see two questions here. Do you recommend using third-party sites such as Import Yeti to source manufacturers? If so, what is the best way to properly use sites like Import Yeti? Well, I'm not really familiar with Import Yeti, but I will tell you one of the things that small businesses have to spend some time doing is properly vetting third parties. Just like some of the larger companies that perhaps small businesses want to work with, they go through a pretty rigorous vetting process and due diligence, because you are always at risk as a company to your brand and your reputation. So how would I go about looking for third parties in these different areas? I would join some associations, small business associations, other like companies that come together, they collaborate, they talk, and they will share experiences. They're not going to give up any proprietary information, but they will share experiences and they will head you off and away from some unscrupulous third parties. But if you should do some normal vetting online, see what people recommend, and then talk to some other companies in your space and ask them, is this a good third party? One of the other things you may want to look at in these export-import areas is whether they are ISO certified, whether there's a 3PL, third-party logistics provider, because that would mean that they have been vetted at one of the highest levels globally, and they have a good stamp of approval on them. I hope that helps. The second question is, what's the best way to create business and financial plans? Third-party apps, web-based, or manually? Well, I'm a big believer in you've got to put pen to paper. You can go to, I don't have that book here in my office, but there are some really good books if you search like Amazon.com for creating business plans that will guide you. So I mentioned a few things that must be in your business plan. You have to know that there is a opportunity for the business that you're in, right? And you can't fool yourself if there's no opportunity, if there's 20 other companies that do the same thing in this small space, it's going to be hard for you to be successful. But if you can identify that business opportunity, that's one. You have to make sure you incorporate your business. You have to write about capital and capital sources. You need to know the competitive landscape. You need to talk about technology and its role in your company. These are 4 or 5 different things. And if you get one of these good books, you'll see a list of probably 12 or 15 that you don't have to have 7 pages on them. You might have 5 or 6 paragraphs, but it's going to drive your business. And then you'll learn also in terms of financial planning, how to build a pro forma model. And this is where Excel comes in and some basic financial exposure. So if I opened a business and I can first put my capital in, but if I want to hire people, I may need additional capital support. Well, this is what the bank or other investors will look at. Show me your financial plan. So I've got a pro forma that says year 1, 2, and 3. And let's say I sell hats. I'm expecting to have X amount of money in overhead. I have to buy these materials. It's going to cost me X for the office. I've got to pay myself something to live and be here tomorrow. I have to have insurance. And so you have the expense side. But then you're going to have the projected revenue side. So the first year, you may not have any revenue. You may just break even. And let's say break even is $100,000 or $200,000. Well, in year 2, when you've added one other person, when you've driven the cost to produce that hat down, and all the other factors there, you may say, oh, our revenue now is $500,000, but our costs went down from 100 to 50. So now you take the 50 away from the 500,000, I've got a profit of $450,000, all things being equal. They want to see that plan. So that has to be built out. If you don't know how to do it, you need to find someone who can help you. And there are other small businesses that will help to set up your accounting system, your chart of accounts, will help you build out your pro forma statement, and then help you to manage it for a reasonable fee. So hopefully that also has helped to give you some ideas in response to your question. I don't know if there's any other questions, but those are the two that were in the chat. And so I thank you very much. I think I'll hand it back over to Koa. If there's any other questions, feel free to put in the chat before we sign off. Thank you again.
Thank you, Professor Tate, for that informative presentation and for your time today. So I do want to let everyone know once more, if you're looking for a little bit more help in your business, feel free to reach out to us via phone here, our email, or you can request one-on-one counseling on our website at www.rnsbdc.com. And also, if you find that you're watching the video replay, you have any more questions, feel free to send us an email and we'll go ahead and direct those questions over to Professor Tate. Okay, so at this time, I just want to direct everyone over to the chat. There, I will be posting our last and final webinar for the year 2021, which is our B2B private labeling, supplying a store brand webinar, which is part of our e-commerce webinars here. And that is directly after this one at 12 p.m. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to go ahead, click on the link and register for that webinar. But also below that, I have the link to our training page on our website. So we will have all of our webinars and workshops for the year 2022 updated in just a few days. So feel free to click on that link and just save it until a few days. And then you can go ahead and register and sign up for all of the webinars and workshops that we are hosting for next year. We did add a few more webinars, so feel free to check back at that link in just a few days. I do want to remind everyone that you will be receiving the video replay as well as the presentation slides for this webinar within 48 to 72 hours so that you can have this information to apply to your business. And once this webinar ends in the browser, you should see a survey pop up. Now that survey will help us to adjust our presentations in the future, as well as give us a little bit of background information on the type of assistance you may be needing for your business. So if you have just a minute or two to complete that, your feedback is much appreciated. And on that note, we will now go ahead and end this webinar. I want to say thank you again to Professor Tate for sharing your expertise with us. And thank you to all of our attendees for taking the time out to attend and participate in today's webinar. And we look forward to seeing you all at our future webinars and workshops. Have a great weekend, everyone.